you're dealing with a woman and her name ends with the letter A and it's pronounced understand this. She is on this earth to snatch your soul from right out of your chest. And she's not going to give it back to you either.
She flew to a Caribbean island to celebrate her sister's birthday, and she came home in a casket. What you were about to find out is that the man she left the club with that night was not who he appeared to be, and by the time anyone figured that out, it was already too late.
A 29-year-old Miami woman, Denanishia Delancey, was fatally shot in St. Martin on March 2nd, 2026, after gunmen ambushed a vehicle in what is believed to be a targeted attack on Trinidadian businessman Quincy Damon Sylvester, who also died at the scene. Delancey, in St. Martin for a birthday trip, is thought to have been an innocent bystander caught in the crossfire. Authorities have arrested one suspect, but are still searching for the main assailants.
Now, before we get into the night everything went wrong, you need to know who Denanishia was, because she deserves more than just being remembered as a headline. Denanishia Delancey was 29 years old, born and raised in Liberty City, Miami. If you do not know Liberty City, it is a historically black neighborhood in Miami-Dade County that has its own culture, its own energy, and its own way of raising people who are strong and full of life at the same time. The neighborhood shaped her, and she carried that in the best possible way. Everyone who knew Denanishia talked about her the same way, as someone who walked into a room and immediately made it feel different, louder, warmer, more alive. Her friends called her baby girl. They said her laugh was contagious, that her smile could light up any space she walked into, and that she had a way of making people around her feel at ease just by being present.
Y'all look at this shit. Woo. Woo. I'm finna hit the rock. I gotta go there.
She was a Florida State University graduate, which means she had put in the work, moved away from home, earned her degree, and come back to Miami to build her life. She had no criminal record, no connection to any gang or drug network, nothing like that at all. She loved to travel, loved to go out and enjoy herself, loved collecting experiences and memories with the people she cared about. Family and friends described her consistently as vibrant, full of life, and someone who embraced every moment. There was nothing complicated about who Denanishia was. She was good people, full stop. Her sister's name was Sincaria, and the two of them were very close. They were both 29 at the time, born and raised together in Liberty City, and when Sincaria's birthday came around in early March of 2026, Denanishia helped organize a trip to celebrate. The plan was a girls' getaway to St. Martin, a small Caribbean island split between the Dutch and French sides, known for its beaches, parties, and warm weather. Denanishia, Sincaria, and one of their close friends would go together for a few days, enjoy the sun, hit the beaches, party a little, and come home with good memories. That was the whole plan. Nothing complicated or dangerous, just three women from Miami doing what people do on vacation. Now there's a second person you need to know before this story makes full sense, and this is the man whose world Denanishia walked into without knowing a single thing about it. Quincy Damon Sylvester was a Trinidadian national who had been living and working in St. Martin for years. On the outside, he was a businessman. He ran a PVC pipe sales and installation company on Welgelegan Road in the Cahill area of the island, a working-class neighborhood of small warehouses and shops. That normal appearance was deliberate, because authorities and reporting on the investigation would later confirm that police believed the whole operation was a cover for serious drug trafficking. St. Martin sits right in the middle of the Caribbean's busiest drug route, the corridor that moves product from South America up toward Europe and North America. And according to law enforcement, Sylvester was a significant figure in those networks. He was a suspected kingpin with connections across the region and reported ties to other violent incidents on the island, including what local coverage refers to as the Plumpy Boss shooting. What made Sylvester particularly dangerous from a street standpoint was how completely invisible he was to the public. He had no social media presence, no prior arrests, interviews, news coverage, or anything at all in any public record before the night he was killed. You could search his name across every Trinidad and St. Martin news archive and find absolutely zero going back years. That kind of invisibility in today's world is not something that just happens. It is built and maintained on purpose. And it's exactly what lets people in that kind of life keep operating without interference, sometimes for a very long time. But it also meant that nobody in his social circle or around him could see what he truly was, or understand the level of danger that traveled with him wherever he went. Denanishia had never met him before that night, and had no way of knowing any of this. He came across at the club as a generous, well-connected local who was showing some Miami women a good time. That's how it looked from where she was standing. And the gap between that surface and what was actually underneath it is exactly what cost her her life. Now we get into what actually happened, and pay attention here because the details matter. Denanishia, Sincaria, and their friend arrived in St. Martin in early March of 2026. This was their first time on the island. They had done this the smart way, booking a private Airbnb on the Dutch side and arranging a private driver for the whole trip so they wouldn't have to rely on strangers to get around. They landed, settled in, and went straight to a day party. Some accounts mention beaches and a beach bar with rope swings. The first hours of that trip were exactly what they were supposed to be: 3 women from Miami having a good time on a Caribbean island for a birthday. That night, going from March 1st into the early hours of March 2nd, the 3 of them headed out to a nightclub. Most coverage calls the place White Rabbit, though some St. Martin reporting refers to it as Nowhere Special, and sources treat them as the same venue in the Maho area of the island. This was their first night out, the real start of the birthday celebration. Inside the club, Denanishia met Quincy Damon Sylvester. Reports describe him as being generous at the club that night, buying drinks, being social, moving through the space like someone who belonged there and knew everyone. To Denanishia and her people, he was just a local with connections who seemed to be showing them a good time. She had no reason to think anything different. But here's what none of them could see. While this was happening inside that club, there were men in that same space who had come to St. Martin specifically to kill Quincy, and they had been watching him all night. Surveillance footage recovered from the club by investigators would later show unknown individuals monitoring Sylvester throughout the entire evening, tracking his movements, watching where he was going, waiting for the right moment. These were not people who showed up randomly. They had come with a plan, and they were patient enough to carry it out. When the night wound down and the club was closing, the group had to decide how they were getting back. Sincaria and her friend got in with the private driver they had booked and headed back to the Airbnb. Denanishia chose to leave with Sylvester in his SUV instead. That was the last time her sister saw her alive. Just after 3:30 in the morning on March 2nd of 2026, Sylvester's gray SUV was ambushed on Arlette Peters Road, also known as Old Cake House Road in the Phillipsburg area of St. Martin. Gunmen opened fire on the vehicle. The shots caused the SUV to lose control and flip over completely. Both Denanishia Delancey and Quincy Damon Sylvester were inside that overturned vehicle when police arrived, and both were pronounced dead at the scene. She was 29 years old, and it was her first night on the island. When the call came in to KPSM Central Dispatch, it was reported as a vehicle rollover. Officers arrived expecting a traffic accident and found a gray SUV lying upside down with 2 people inside who were already dead. At first, it appeared to be a bad crash, the kind that happens late at night when someone loses control of a vehicle.
The traffic department took the initial call while the detective department was notified, but the forensic sweep of the scene changed everything quickly. Investigators found bullet holes in the vehicle, and from that point, the entire story shifted. The gunfire had caused the crash. Someone had shot at the SUV while it was moving. The bullets had hit the vehicle and the people inside, and the SUV had flipped as a result. The case was reclassified as a double homicide and transferred to the KPSM Major Crimes Team, all within hours of the first call. Back at the Airbnb, Sincaria and their friend had no idea any of this had happened. Hours after the club closed, their private driver called Sincaria to check on everyone and told her that the man Denanishia had left with had been found dead. That call is what triggered the report to police and allowed investigators to connect Denishia's identity to the scene. On the same day of the shooting, KPSM conducted targeted house searches at multiple locations across St. Martin. These were not random searches. Investigators already had intelligence pointing them in specific directions, and they moved fast. 2 days after the ambush, on March 4th, 2026, police arrested a Trinidadian national identified only by the initials AH. The evidence gathered during those house searches had led them directly to him, and he has remained in custody since then. Now here is what the 3 main pieces of evidence actually showed, because they tell you clearly that this was not a random act of violence, and Denanishia was never the intended target. The surveillance footage from White Rabbit is the most critical piece of evidence when it comes to proving this was planned well ahead of time. The cameras inside the club captured unknown individuals watching Sylvester throughout the entire night, tracking his movements, following him around the space. These were not people who got into an argument that got out of hand. They came in with a job to do, watched their target the whole time, and waited for the right moment. When Sylvester walked out of that club, they followed him. That footage was what allowed police to confirm this was a premeditated, organized hit rather than some random act of street violence, and it changed the entire direction of the investigation. The bullet holes in the SUV confirmed how it was carried out. The vehicle had been shot at while moving, the gunfire caused it to flip, and both people inside died from those gunshot wounds. Police have not released the full ballistics findings publicly, which is standard for an active investigation, but the basic facts of what happened are confirmed. The house searches on the day of the shooting produced evidence specific enough to lead to the arrest of AH just 2 days later. KPSM has not disclosed what was seized, but the speed of that arrest tells you investigators had solid intelligence from very early on. The Major Crimes Team, working alongside the prosecutor's office, described the probe as deepening and said more arrests were expected. All known suspects are believed to be Trinidadian nationals with connections to organized crime networks operating across the Caribbean. The main shooter and additional accomplices remain at large as of the latest public reporting, and the case continues with St. Martin and Dutch Caribbean jurisdiction, with no U.S. federal involvement publicly reported.
Now, let us talk about the conversation this case started online, because it went viral across Black social media for a reason, and the way people responded says a lot about how we process these kinds of stories. When news of Denishia's death spread in early April of 2026, the response split almost immediately into two directions. One side was grief and outrage. People who recognized her, people from Miami, people from the Black travel community, people who just saw themselves in her story came together to mourn her and celebrate who she was. The other side was a debate about her choices, specifically the decision to leave the club without her group and get into a car with a man she had just met. The phrase that spread everywhere was, "If you go out together, come back together," and that became the lens through which a lot of people processed what happened. Some of that conversation was well-meaning. The reality is that the Caribbean, as beautiful as it is, has serious criminal infrastructure running through it, and travelers, especially Black American women, need to be aware that that infrastructure touches the nightlife and social spaces they are visiting. St. Martin specifically sits on one of the main drug routes in the whole region. The same year before Denanishia was killed, a 50-year-old Chicago sheriff's deputy named Shimon Duncan was shot and killed at a rooftop restaurant in Turks and Caicos while on a trip to celebrate her sister's birthday. Duncan was not the target either. She was completely innocent, sitting at a restaurant with no connection at all to the people who were shooting.
The Cook County Sheriff's Office is mourning a deputy killed while on vacation on the island of Turks and Caicos. Royal Turks police say 50-year-old Shimon Duncan was one of two people who died in a shooting last night at a bar and restaurant in Turks and Caicos. A third person seriously wounded. Investigators don't believe any of the victims were intended targets. So far, no one in custody. Duncan, by the way, a 20-year vet of the Cook County Department of Corrections.
In 2024, an American woman named Nico Honerbach was killed at a beach club in Tulum, Mexico, caught in the middle of a shootout between drug dealers who had nothing to do with her. The pattern keeps showing up.
We're now learning that a woman from LA was killed during a drug-related shootout in the Mexican resort of Tulum. 44-year-old Nico Honerbach was killed by a stray bullet in the February 9th shooting. Earlier reports said she was in a relationship with a drug dealer who was killed in the shooting, but police now say that is not true. Alleged drug dealer from Belize was also killed in the crossfire. Authorities have identified several suspects, but no arrests have been made so far.
American women on celebratory trips in popular tourist areas killed because criminal activity operates in those same spaces. But here is where some of the online commentary went wrong. A portion of what people were saying shifted the entire weight of what happened onto Denishia's choices and quietly let the people who actually planned and carried out a murder disappear from the center of the conversation. A group of men organized an assassination. They traveled from Trinidad to St. Martin specifically to kill someone and tracked their target all night inside a club full of people. They followed his vehicle down a dark road at 3:30 in the morning and they opened fire. That is what killed Denanishia Delancey, not the decision she made at the end of a birthday night out. Her family's position has been consistent across everything that came out publicly. She was in the wrong place at the wrong time. She had no knowledge of who Sylvester really was because there was no way to know. The man had no public record, arrests, or prior news coverage. Nothing. His real life was completely hidden. You could have done a full background search on him and found nothing. That invisibility was on design, and it's exactly what made him so dangerous to everyone around him, including a 29-year-old woman from Miami who just wanted to enjoy her sister's birthday. Denishia's body was brought back to Miami. Her visitation was held on Friday, April 3rd from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. at Mitchell Funeral Home at 8080 Northwest 22nd Avenue in Miami. Her celebration of life took place the next day, Saturday, April 4th at 1 p.m. at 93rd Street Community Baptist Church at 2333rd Northwest 93rd Street. Miami came out for her. Liberty City came out for her. Some accounts mention an all-white dress code and a motorcycle hearse as part of how the community sent her home properly. What do you think about Denanishia going home with Sylvester? Is this something you think anyone could have been a victim of? Drop your thoughts in the comments.
This shit is so cool, I ain't gonna lie.
And click on one of the cards to see more videos like this. See you in the next one.